Marlee Armstrong looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "So," she said, swirling her wine, not even looking up, "Ella, what's your last name again? Your real one?" That was it. 30 seconds in the door and she'd already gone for the throat. That's Marlee for you, Leon's mother. Silk dress, pearl earrings, a smile that never once reached her eyes. She'd built her whole personality around one idea. Some people are born right, and some people aren't. Guess which one she thought I was? I'm Ella Riley. I'm 26. And before I tell you what happened at that dinner table, you need to know where I came from because it matters. It's the whole reason she looked at me like that. I lost my parents in a car wreck when I was 5. Rainy night, bad road, gone before I even understood what gone meant. No family stepped up. I went into the system. Foster homes, group homes, more of the same cold hallways than I can count. When I was 9, a couple named Harrison Graham and Laura Wright adopted me. Real estate money, old and quiet. They gave me everything except an actual answer to, "Am I your daughter?" I never once heard either of them say the word daughter and mean it. I was raised in a mansion like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. So when I met Leon Gray in college, at some mental health seminar neither of us really wanted to be at, and he made me laugh in the first 2 minutes, that hit different. He wasn't flashy. He remembered how I took my coffee. He sat with me when I couldn't sleep. For the first time in my life, somebody looked at me and didn't see a project or a charity case. He saw me. We got married 3 years later. Small wedding, no fuss. I should have known that a small wedding to us meant a small problem to his family. Which brings me back to that dinner table in Charleston, Marlee's dining room. Chandeliers dripping gold light onto a table set for people who'd never once had to worry about rent. "Riley," I said. "It's Riley." She set her glass down like the answer bored her. "And before that, before the Grahams took you in, I mean, what were you before you got rescued?" The table went quiet. Leon's dad kept eating like he hadn't heard a thing. Leon's sister looked at her napkin. And Leon, my husband, the man who used to hold my hand through nightmares, just sat there, silent, like his tongue had gone somewhere real far away. "I was in foster care," I said, keeping my voice level because I'd promised myself I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of watching me shake. "Since I was 5. Marlee smiled, actual smile, like I'd just handed her exactly what she wanted. "Well," she said, turning to Leon, "I suppose that explains a lot, doesn't it? No wonder she doesn't know how to carry herself at a table like this. You can't unlearn where you started." I felt my face go hot, not from embarrassment, from something colder than that. "Mom," he said, just that, one word. Not, "That's enough," not, "Don't talk to my wife like that," just her name, soft, like he was asking her to pass the salt. I looked at him, really looked, waited for the man who used to sit with me during panic attacks to show up. He didn't. He picked his fork back up and started eating again, eyes down, like if he didn't look at either of us, the whole thing might just resolve itself. That's when I understood something I should have known a long time ago. The people in that room weren't ever going to see me as family, and the one person who was supposed to stand between me and that kind of cruelty had just chosen silence instead. I put my napkin down, stood up. Nobody stopped me. "Thank you for dinner," I said to Marlee, and I meant every word of the sarcasm behind it. I walked out of that house alone. Leon didn't follow me. Not that night. What none of them knew, what I hadn't told a single person at that table, was who actually raised me, who Harrison Graham and Laura Wright really were, and what they were capable of when somebody hurt their daughter. Marlee Armstrong had just insulted the wrong girl's family in the wrong city at the wrong dinner table. She had no idea what was coming for her. If you've ever sat at a table and felt like you had to earn your seat, drop a comment below. I want to hear it. And hit follow. Rewind 2 years. Before the dinner, before the silence, before I knew what Leon Gray was actually made of. I met him at a community college in Chicago at some free mental health seminar I only went to because my psych professor gave extra credit for it. Rainy Tuesday night, I was sitting in the 3rd row when this guy dropped into the seat next to me, hair soaked, jacket dripping on the linoleum. "You here for the extra credit?" he asked, "or do you actually care?" Blunt, a little dumb, made me laugh anyway. That was Leon. Studying software engineering, worked part-time at a coffee shop, drove a car that made a weird sound every time he braked. Nothing about him screamed money or ceremony, and after growing up in a house full of both, Harrison and Laura's mansion, tutors, custom-made clothes, and not one single photo of me on the walls, nothing screamed money and ceremony sounded like heaven. We got dinner after the seminar. I don't know what made me do it, but I told him everything. My parents' accident, the group homes, being adopted at 9 by people who dressed me up and paraded me around at parties, but made me swear never to say the word orphanage out loud in front of guests. I'd never told a stranger that much in one sitting in my life. Leon didn't flinch, didn't get that look people get, half pity, half relief it's not their story. He just said, "You made it. That's what matters." I fell for him right there in a diner booth over cold fries. For 3 years, Leon made me feel like a person instead of a performance. He learned how I took my coffee. He'd throw a blanket over me at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep because my brain wouldn't shut off. He never once made me feel like a charity case, which, growing up the way I did, was rarer than anything money could buy. But here's the thing about cracks. They don't show up all at once. They show up small, and you talk yourself out of noticing them. The first time I asked about his family, he waved it off. They're traditional, old school. We don't really operate the same way. I let it go. I believed if 2 people loved each other enough, everything else worked itself out eventually. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. Then I started noticing the pattern. Every holiday, Leon went home to Charleston alone. Every family event got mentioned to me after it already happened. Thanksgiving, I sat in our apartment with a frozen dinner while he sat at his parents' table 3 states away, and when I asked him how it went, he said, "Fine," like I hadn't just spent 5 hours by myself wondering if I even existed to the people who mattered to him. I finally asked him straight out, "Why haven't you told your parents about me?" He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You don't know my mom, Ella. She cares a lot about where people come from. She's gonna ask about your family, and I don't know how to explain it to her yet." Explain what? Me? That's not what I meant. But it was exactly what he meant, and we both knew it. I told him straight up, I know what it's like to be somebody's secret. I lived it my whole childhood. I'm not doing that again, not with the person I'm supposed to be building a life with. He promised it would change, said he just needed the right moment, swore up and down his mom would come around once she actually met me instead of judging me from a distance. I wanted to believe him so bad, I let it slide for another year. Then, on a cold night in the same park where we had our first kiss, Leon got down on one knee. I cried. Not the happy kind of crying you see in movies. Half of me wanted to say yes with my whole chest. The other half already knew, somewhere underneath all that hope, that Leon Gray had never once stood up to his mother for anything in his life, and marrying him meant eventually finding out if he'd stand up for me. I said yes anyway, because I loved him, because I wanted so bad to believe love was strong enough to out-argue a woman like Marlee Armstrong before I'd even met her. I had no idea how wrong I was about to be proven, or how soon. 3 weeks after the engagement, Leon finally told his mother about me. He called me right after, voice tight. "She wants to meet you. Dinner. Charleston, next month." I should have heard the warning in his voice. I didn't. I just heard "she wants to meet me" and let myself hope one more time that maybe this family would be different from the last one that never let me in. I had no idea I was walking straight into the dinner that would end my marriage before it even really started. 6 months into the marriage, Marlee sent an invitation to her and Leon's father's 35th wedding anniversary. Fancy card, gold lettering, held at some private club in Boston where his family had roots going back generations. Leon wanted to go. "We can't keep avoiding them forever," he said. "Maybe if they see we're solid, happy, actually married, they'll come around." I didn't believe that for a second. I'd been meeting the family my whole life in one form or another. Foster placements, adoptive parents' business dinners, always waiting to see if this was the room where somebody finally decided I belonged. It never was. But I loved Leon, so I put on a simple navy dress, did my hair, and went. The club was the kind of place where the air itself smelled expensive. String quartet in the corner, servers with white gloves, laughter that all sounded rehearsed. Leon held my hand walking in like he was bracing for something. Nobody greeted us. People shook Leon's hand, gave him a nod, moved right past me like I was part of the wallpaper. I caught one of his aunts leaning toward her husband, not even bothering to lower her voice enough. "Wonder which one of the caterers wandered off," she said, and they both laughed. Leon heard it. I know he did, because his hand tightened around mine hard enough to hurt. But he didn't say anything, just kept walking, looking for somewhere for us to sit. Every table was full, not "we're a little tight on seats" full in that specific way where you know it was arranged. We stood there in the middle of the room for a solid 2 minutes, while people who knew exactly who we were looked straight through us. Then Marlee appeared, smiling like she'd just remembered we existed. "Oh, you two should have arrived earlier," she said. "All the tables filled up, but there's folding chairs in the back by the kitchen if you don't mind." Folding chairs, by the kitchen, at her own son's table, next to his own wife, and she offered us folding chairs like we were the help that showed up late? I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My chest was too tight. Leon's jaw locked. For 1 second I thought, finally, here it is. Here's the man who defended me. And he did, sort of. "We don't need folding chairs," he said, low and hard. "We don't need to be here, either." We walked out. The room didn't even pause for us. Laughter picked right back up like we'd never been standing there at all. In the car, Leon was shaking. I thought it was anger on my behalf. I was wrong. "That was humiliating," he said, staring out the windshield. "I know," I said. "I felt it too." "No, Ella, you made it worse. You didn't say one word to anybody all night. You just stood there. Couldn't you at least try?" I turned and stared at him. "Try what, exactly? They didn't even look at me, Leon. Your aunt called me the help. That's not an excuse to make me look bad in front of my whole family." I felt something crack open in my chest, right down the middle. "You're embarrassed because of me?" He didn't answer for a long moment. Then, quiet, "They're my family. You made tonight harder than it needed to be." I laughed, but nothing about it was funny. "So if we ever have a daughter and somebody treats her like she doesn't belong in a room, you gonna tell her to just endure it too?" He didn't answer that one either. He just drove. That was the night I understood something I'd spend the next few weeks trying to unknow. Leon didn't love his family's comfort more than me. He loved not having to choose, and every single time it came down to it, not choosing meant choosing them. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a bad night. People say dumb stuff under pressure. I had one more dinner left before I found out exactly how wrong that hope was, and this one wouldn't end with just an insult. It would end with Leon handing me cash like a cab fare in front of his entire family and telling me to go home before I embarrassed him further. 2 weeks after Boston, Marlee hosted a birthday dinner for Leon's grandfather at the same house where she'd first asked me my real last name. I almost didn't go. My gut told me not to. But Leon begged, said it was family, said maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. We were maybe 20 minutes into dinner when Marlee set her fork down with a sharp clink against the china, loud enough that the whole table went quiet. "I really don't understand," she said, looking straight at me like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away, "what my son thinks he's doing, tying himself to a girl with no background, no family name, nothing." Nobody moved. Leon's dad kept his eyes on his plate. His sister stared at her napkin like it held the answer to something. "There are plenty of decent women out there," Marlee went on, "from good families, with an actual history you can point to, and he picks some," she waved a hand at me like I was a stain she couldn't name, "some nobody from foster care. It's honestly embarrassing." I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "You don't have to like me, fine, but you don't get to talk about me like I'm not sitting right here." She actually laughed. Oh, listen to her, an orphan with an attitude. I looked at Leon one more time, begging him with my eyes to say something, anything, to be the man who once told me, "You survived and you made it, that's what matters." He wouldn't even look up. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of cash and pressed it into my hand under the table. "Just go," he whispered. "Don't make a scene." I have been insulted plenty in my life. Foster homes teach you that fast. But nothing hurt like watching my own husband hand me money to disappear quietly, like I was an inconvenience he was settling up with. I put the cash back on the table. "I don't need your money," I said, loud enough for the whole room. "I need my husband to see me as a person." Silence. Nobody said a word. I turned and walked out. I didn't cry in the car. I was done crying for that family. That night, I called my adoptive parents, Harrison and Laura. I'd never told them the full extent of what I'd been living with, the silence, the folding chairs, the comments about my background. I told them everything now, calm, flat, like I was reading off a receipt. There was a long pause on the line. Then my father said, "We're coming to Charleston tomorrow." See, here's the thing I never told Leon's family, and honestly never told Leon either, not really, not the way it mattered. Harrison Graham wasn't just some wealthy guy who adopted an orphan out of pity. He built one of the largest private real estate portfolios on the East Coast. Laura wasn't just his wife. She sat on 3 boards and had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations. I never used that, never wanted to. I wanted people to like me for me, not for the name behind me. Marlee Armstrong was about to find out exactly whose daughter she'd spent 2 dinners humiliating. The actual grandfather's birthday party, the big one, the one with 200 guests at a private club, happened 4 days later. I almost didn't go, but my mother looked at me and said, "They insulted you. Now it's their turn to understand who they insulted." I walked in wearing a plain black dress, no jewelry, nothing flashy. My adoptive parents walked in on either side of me. The room actually went quiet. Marlee spotted us first, and her face did this thing, confusion, then irritation, like she couldn't figure out why the Grahams were at her father-in-law's party. "Marlee," I said, "I don't think you've met my parents, Harrison and Laura Graham." You could have heard a fork drop. Somebody's actually did. My father stepped forward and set a folder down in front of Leon, slow, deliberate. "Divorce papers," he said. "My daughter has nothing left to hold on to in this marriage, and I will not stand by while she's treated like garbage by people who judge others based on where they came from instead of who they are." Leon stared at the folder like it might bite him. He didn't say a word. Not one. Marlee's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I stood there under those chandeliers, and for the first time in 2 years of marriage, I didn't feel small. I felt like I was finally standing straight. What none of them knew yet was that this wasn't the end of the damage, it was just the beginning. News travels fast when it's got money and shame stitched into it. Within 2 days, somebody at that party had leaked the whole thing. My father setting divorce papers in front of Leon, Marlee's face when she realized exactly who she'd spent months insulting. It hit local business circles first, then wider. Turns out powerful families notice when other powerful families get humiliated in public. By the end of that week, 2 of Leon's father's biggest investors had pulled out of a deal that was supposed to close that quarter. Nobody said it was because of me directly, nobody had to. In that world, word gets around about how a family treats people, and it turns out a lot of folks don't want their name next to people who publicly humiliate a daughter-in-law over her background. I didn't do anything. I want to be clear about that. I didn't call anyone, didn't leak anything, didn't ask my parents to intervene in anyone's business. I just stopped protecting people who'd never once protected me. The messages started coming a few days later, first from Marlee's side of the family, angry. You planned this whole thing. You married into this family for revenge. Money doesn't buy you class. I didn't answer any of them. Then the tone shifted, fast, once things actually started falling apart for real. Please, can you talk to your father? They didn't know who you were. Leon hasn't eaten in days. I still didn't answer. Funny how silence gets called an attitude when you're the one being insulted, but suddenly it's cruelty when the tables turn. Leon signed the divorce papers 3 weeks later. No call, no final conversation, nothing. Just a notice from my father's lawyer that it was done. Clean, quiet. About as much effort as he'd put into standing up for me the entire time we were together. There's no version of that ending that hurt less because it was quiet, but there's also no version where I regret walking away. My parents took me to Savannah for a week after everything settled. No big plan, no agenda, just somewhere warm and slow where nobody knew my last name or cared where I came from. We sat on a porch near the river one evening, and my mother, Laura, who I hadn't heard say much in the way of soft words my whole life, took my hand. You don't owe anyone an explanation for where you started. Not them, not anyone. I didn't cry. I think I was done crying for people who never once cried over how they'd treated me. Here's what I know now that I didn't know sitting at that first dinner table in Charleston, listening to Marlee Armstrong ask for my real last name, like I'd stolen the one I had. Some people will always measure you by where you came from, instead of what you survived to get here. You can't argue somebody out of that. You can only decide how long you're willing to sit at their table waiting for them to change their mind. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not chasing anything, not proving anything, not performing for a room that already decided I didn't belong before I opened my mouth. I get to choose what comes next, and for the first time in my life, that's exactly what I'm doing.